This video is for Russ. Russ, we're going to take a look at your amp and talk about some of the things I recommend we do to restore its former glory and make sure it'll be around another 58 years or so. It is unplugged from the wall, and I've actually drained all the filter capacitors with this device to make sure I won't get shocked. So definitely safety conscious here. We'll take a look at it. It's all original on this side of the chassis. Original transformers are involved here, are installed still. And this is the first thing we want to talk about. As you'll notice, I've removed a cover to expose these capacitors here, okay? We refer to that cover as the doghouse, okay? We pop that cover off and it exposes these capacitors. These are the original filter capacitors that were installed when the amp was new. You can see that they're rated for a lot of voltage. These need to be replaced, Russ. Most definitely, in order to operate the amp safely, these need to be replaced. If these things go, it can get real ugly and cause a lot of problems for more expensive components on down the line, etc. So I'm going to recommend we replace all these. They all show signs of leakage and bulging, etc. Also on this little board here, you'll see a couple of resistors. We're going to check those out to make sure that they're still within spec and tolerance. If not, we'll replace them while we've got everything out. In fact, I recommend we just go ahead and replace them while we've got this out. These resistors are about 35 cents a piece. They get exposed to a lot of voltage and heat here as well. And while we've got it open, let's just go ahead and plan on replacing those to restore it. So we'll do that. Let's go over here to your output tubes. One of the first things we notice here is the discoloration. And it's fairly normal to get some discoloration on this part of the amplifier because these generate a lot of heat. However, I think they've been running a little too hot. And you indicated that your style of playing is leans more on the clean side. These particular tubes here would be for someone who wanted a distorted sound. So I'm going to recommend we replace your power tubes and then all the rest of the tubes as well. And we'll send you that in the email. But I do have all these on hand, and I bought them years ago when they were a lot cheaper than what they are now. So we'll give you a really good price on those. Don't worry about that. But I do recommend we replace all those, get it set up properly. And I want to try to mitigate this excessive heat in the future because it does put a lot of strain on the components underneath. And speaking of components underneath, let's go ahead and flip it over and take a look at the rest. Okay, let's take a look at the underside. The big question that I had in my mind was, has it ever been worked on? Well, I was pleased to find out that someone did actually have a 3-prong plug installed, and looks like they did a pretty good job at doing that, so hats off to them. We've got the green wire going to ground, and then the white and black wire, the power wire and the return or neutral coming in here. And so hats off to them. It has been worked on. As far as the other work, there's 2 potentiometers in here that have been changed out at some point in their life, as indicated by some fresh solder on them. And but more about the potentiometers later. Let's start at this part of the amp. We'll kind of work our way around. If you'll notice on the back of your amplifier, they used to put this plug here to where if you wanted to plug in additional things, you could. Okay. Notice it's only 2 prongs. It's not 3. It doesn't have the ground. And then you have what's called a ground switch. Older homes did not have, as you may recall, depending on how old you are, older homes did not have the 3-prong grounded outlet. Okay, so the way they would make up for that is they would put this ground switch, and then when you could reposition this to simulate a ground via this capacitor that someone has replaced. Okay, it's got a nickname called the death cap. A death capacitor. But what I'm going to recommend, Russ, is that we go ahead and take the power, bring it through the fuse and through the power switch and then onto the transformer through these black wires here, taking these 2 components out of the equation. Now we'll leave them installed. Obviously you want it to look normal and you don't want a hole in the back of the amp that somebody could stick something through. So we'll leave them installed, but the wires will simply be lifted safely and removed from these. And that way, if anybody does want to ever make it fully restored to like a museum kind of condition here where everything is perfect as it was when it left the factory, you can rewire them in easily enough. But this just leaves us open for problems later on down the road. I prefer to have just clean power coming straight in through the fuse and the switch to the transformer. I think you're going to find it works better. These are no longer necessary. And of course, this one's not the safest because it's not grounded anyway. And this is not needed in today's modern electricity. So with your permission, we'll just come in straight here and wire it up and keep it that way. Keep it simple and eliminate these things, okay? Leave them installed, but take them out of the electrical path to avoid problems with that in the future. While we're here, on the other side, sorry about my feet, I don't know how to get them out of the video. On the underside of where you saw all that heat from those power tubes, well, there's 2 resistors for each of the 4 output tube sockets. These resistors have gotten a ton of heat over the last 58 years, and they've drifted out of tolerance. I believe it's this one is out of tolerance. The others have drifted enough to cause concern. They're 50 cents a piece or so. Let's replace the 2 resistors on each output tube socket. I do recommend we do that for reliability, so they don't burn open and cause problems later on. Let's go on the other side of the power transformer up to this area of the amplifier. These are your diodes that rectify the voltage. What we're trying to do is take AC voltage, bring it up to about 400, 450 volts or so, and give us nice clean voltage. We have to control that voltage going out through a bias circuit. And so this is all kind of components with that. You'll notice we come across one of the old style capacitors like we saw on the other side of the amp. Recommend we replace this one. In fact, this one's bulging on the end right here, which means eventually it's going to fail. And when it goes, you're going to lose your ability to control voltage. Same with this resistor here. It is a 1 watt resistor. And most of the resistors in here are half watt. They made this one a 1 watt because they knew it would get exposed to a lot of heat. And I recommend we replace this one as well. It's actually drifted a little out of tolerance. I've tested it due to the years of wear and tear. So these 2, recommend we replace those for the safe operation and proper operation of the amp. As far as your potentiometers are concerned, instead of just jumping in and replacing them because they're scratchy, because it is such a beautiful historic old amplifier, I'd like to at least try to get them cleaned up before I decide to replace them. If we do have to replace them, they're anywhere from $3 to $7, just depending on which brand you get, etc. So they're not that expensive. But if they're properly disassembled and cleaned and reassembled, they should last another 58 years. I don't like to just spray the deoxit in there and rotate it a few times and get it working for another 5 or 10 years, possibly that long. I'd like to go ahead and make them right. So that'll require me to desolder these wires. I've kind of lifted these out initially just to look at it, you can see, but just to desolder the wires, take them out one at a time, clean it, put it back in, and see if I've gotten it fixed. And if I didn't, then I'll let you know and we'll replace them as we go. On your main board here, you'll notice you do have some of those old style capacitors. These need to be replaced. For example, on this one right here, there's you can barely see it, but there's a little white booger that's coming out of there. That means the stuff on the inside is leaking to the outside. It's going to fail eventually. Another cool thing to point out here, you see this capacitor only has 1 lead or 1 wire going into it. These each have 2. Okay, this is actually 6 capacitors you're looking at here inside of 3 canisters. There's just 2 capacitors in each one. So when we replace these, there will be much smaller, and there'll be 2 in each location. So it'd be a total of 7 on the board I recommend replacing. And I recommend we do that before I even go any further to apply power to this. All these capacitors that I recommend we replace, if they blow or they go or they explode, it can get real ugly. And they can kill transformers and other things. There's just all kinds of bad things that can happen if we don't get those replaced. So the first phase would be to get those replaced, clean our pots, get everything back together and see how it sounds, see what's going on and go from there. Another point of interest to mention on this board with all these cool looking components, these blue Astron caps are typically known to hold their value. In other words, they don't drift. They were built so good that they seem to last pretty good. Most people keep them. However, I would like to verify that they are the correct value, that they haven't drifted, and that'll require me to unsolder, lift one end of it up, take a measurement across here to make sure that it's still rated as it should be within tolerance. If it is, solder it back down, good to go. If any of these capacitors test out of tolerance, I'll let you know and recommend replacing them. Again, they are not that expensive, okay? Along with cleaning the pots, I would like to clean your input jacks. And you see right here, there's two little pieces close together. That's actually a contact point. When you plug it in, it opens that contact. When you unplug it, it closes it. And so little things like that, we'll go ahead and clean those while we're in there, so it'll ensure long operation for the life of the amp. Cabinet, we'll give it a good clean up and get things looking as good as we can. But that's what I recommend initially. I'm going to send you prices and a list of details in the email that I send this video with to go over it. But it's absolutely a fantastic, beautiful old amplifier. I'm extremely honored and privileged to be looking at it and working on it. And we're going to get it back to you so you don't have to carry it up those stairs anymore to get it repaired. Also want to mention too, this is the reverb tank out of the cabinet, and it is the original reverb tank, and it sounds amazing. So it's a wonderful old amplifier. And watch this video and reply to the email. Let me know what you think we need to do, Russ. Thank you much. Talk to you later. Bye.